Well, looking ahead now to the next section, which is the next 12 months or so, whatever's left. Obviously, you've got no plans in changing any departments. I mean, you're clearly doing a job, and the Chief Minister is very happy, I'm sure. I sound like I'm your PR agent here almost, which is really a worry. But I'm here to obviously delve into it. I mean, have you found it too much at all? And where are you going to go this next year?
No, I mean, I enjoy health and social care because it is a busy department. If I ever turn around and say I'm bored, then there's something seriously wrong. There's always something with health and social care to be getting your teeth into, and I think that's one of the things that appeals to me as a department. In relation to the next 12 months, I think the key thing from a department point of view is to get transformation embedded, get Manx Care up and running, and to build the groundwork and put it in place of the transformed health and social care system.
Will it be on time?
Yes. The legislation is currently going through Keys, so Manx Care, barring accidents with Royal Assent, will be up and running in April. And from an MHK point of view, which of course is very different, and I don't want to spend this whole interview just focusing on my role as Minister, from an MHK point of view, I think the key thing is putting the island back on a stable footing post-COVID. In the next year, getting the finances back in line and ensuring that we've got a robust position to move forward for the next house to inherit.
Will you be going for another overspend, back to Treasury sort of thing?
Figures are fluid in DHSC. As you know, I never try and predict in that regard, because what comes in under budget one month, because of the demands in health and social care, might come over budget the following. I don't want to curse it now, but at the moment it's looking pretty level. But we will wait and see in that regard. I'm not going to be a hostage to fortune on that one.
And just in general, if you park maybe just those sort of things, other things you want to see done in this coming final session?
So I think in terms of legislation, for instance, I'm very keen to have the Capacity Act. I've been campaigning for that for a long time, and it's something that's been talked about for about a decade or more. That will be coming forward. There's various legislation around adoption as well that I think needs clearing up, and we'll be looking to bring those pieces of legislation forward. So there's a huge amount in the legislative programme that I think we've got to try and fit into the next 12 months. Not everything will get done, but there's a lot that we do need to try and push forward.
I mean, so many things have stopped today in government, and just because you're focused, not just you, I mean the whole government was focused on getting out of the current COVID situation.
Well, to be fair, even if you park COVID to one side, there's always pressures and demands across government on the legislative programme, and I think it's important that for the last year we make sure there is proper action to drive that forward.
And remind me, who's your members in health, because it has moved around a bit.
So I've got to be careful I don't miss anyone here. So I've got Mrs Barber, I've got Mrs Corlett, I've got Mr Morehouse, and I've got Mrs Sharp.
How's that working?
It's very well. We work very much as a team. In fact, just before we came into this interview, we've just had our departmental roundtable meeting via Microsoft Teams. That's what I've literally just come from to come and do this interview. We also have ministers and members meetings wherever possible on a Friday, as well as the formal department meetings.
Well, as much as I interviewed you down the line, as they say, I much prefer, as you know, seeing you in person. You seem to always have time for the press as well, and everybody, I'm guessing. People write to you. I know you may get one of those emails saying we're a bit busy at the minute, but is that still that you hope to reply to most people?
Yeah, I do. I try to reply to everyone who gets in contact with me. There's been occasions where things have got lost in the mix, and I've had to apologise to people that haven't been able to get back to them in a super quick time. But again, also with the press, as you know, I always try, and I was the same when I was at Douglas Council, always try to make myself available, because I think it is important to get the message out there and to do interviews like this to get across the points of what's actually happening.
And we'll be talking about this for months, no doubt, to come about when it's all over. There'll be all these inquiries, won't there, about how you did, how they did, how whatever did. It's going to be quite a thing. You seem to have been on top of this from almost. I mean, I think maybe the early days, the press conferences were a bit creaky, but then it found its feet. But do you think you could have done anything different?
I think the issue's been with COVID. There's never been a manual as such for this. Yes, we had a pandemic plan, but it had never been tested. We haven't seen anything like this since Spanish flu, which was 101 years ago, or 102 years ago nearly. And I think that's the big problem. I mean, there's a great manual now for the future if it should ever happen again. I think one of the things I would change, and I think I've said this in an interview with you before.
You remember everything, I don't.
I think, or it might have been even one of the press conferences when you asked me, is I think, again, those early days, I don't think we had the messaging quite right with the public. for those first couple of weeks where it was a bit sporadic.
Yes.
But I think, as you just said yourself, after those first couple of weeks, it became a lot more smoother.
Some quick stuff now. Borders, what's your view? Do you have a personal view, or do you have to have a collective view on this?
No, I have a personal view and a collective view, and it's exactly the same. I believe at the moment we are in the right position. I know that's frustrating for an awful lot of people, and there is people who are concerned about not being able to bring family over or to see them in the ordinary way. But I hope that people will appreciate that, particularly with what we've seen happening in the UK over the last few days, that there is still a serious situation out there, and it is important that we protect the island as much as we can.
Your mailbag must be full with that one, though, in its own right, because people have a very strong view one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always perfectly blunt with people when I go back to them. They might not like the reply sometimes, but I do believe that the policy we have at the moment and the Borders Framework document that we've published is the right staged approach going forward.
Okay, as I said, we'll deal much more with this on another interview, because I'm trying to deal with you. But you've had, and this is totally the wrong expression, but it's being used, a good virus. I mean, you know, in the sense you did come out of this with the public behind you. That's quite something to be saying that, isn't it? And for me to say that to you, which I'm here to sort of try and drill down into you, but even I can see that everyone's saying that you've had not a great time, but, you know, done your job.
Well, I think it's not so much about me. It's about all we can do is, all we can do as a government, and all I can do as a Minister for Health, is actually put the messages out there to explain what we're doing. It's how the Manx public reacted that mattered. And, yes, I think on this occasion we got the messaging right about how we were moving forward, and the Manx public responded. But it's that response that mattered, because if the Manx public hadn't followed what we were saying they should be doing, we'd be in a very different situation now.
Let's talk about standing again. I know, because other people told me you can't make a declaration here because that would put you under all sorts of obligations. But you're clearly a career politician. We've talked about this every year. You're very happy to continue, and obviously the door is open for the top job for you, right?
Well, a couple of things I'm going to mention there. Well, firstly, I think I'm going to say exactly what I think I said to you last year, which is actually, strangely, I don't view myself as a career politician. I've spent years in the private sector prior to being an MHK, and even, of course, though as a Douglas councillor you don't get paid for that role, so I had a private sector job alongside that. I'll be perfectly honest, I haven't decided if I'm going to stand again. I think I've mentioned this before, that I'm one of those weird politicians. I only ever decide about 6 months before an election. So if you ask me around about Easter next year, I'll probably be able to tell you one way or the other.
But so the trouble is, if you say you're standing, then you're under all these restrictions on the how much you spend.
Well,
and that sort of
it's
thing.
not down to that. To be,
is it
not absolutely genuine? I always decide.
No,
I was the same when I was a Douglas councillor as well. And the other one I just want to pick up on, you mentioned there about the top job,
I was going to ask you about it,
which is probably where you were about to go with that.
I am. I mean, your name comes up all the time now. All the time.
I'll be perfectly honest, I can't see myself as being the next chief
comes
minister.
Up all the time. You are seen as a safe pair of hands, and you've got credibility. Well, now, if that's not me glowing at you, which is crazy, but that's what I'm getting the feedback from. You must know this as well. You've got people clapping you at Tymble Day.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a young family at home as well at the moment, and I'm not. At the moment, it's not something I've considered. I'll put it that way.
Wow, but you wouldn't say no if it's.
A year's a long time in politics.
Okay.
I mean, I think it was Howard Wilson who said a week's a long time in politics, and a year most certainly is. Okay. But certainly at the moment, I'm not a Michael Heseltine. I haven't got it all written down on the back of an envelope of my career. Okay.
Well, now we're going to ask you how you think you've done in a number out of 10, please.
So we go through this every year.
What do you say? I don't try
so I'm going to preempt your second question, which will be how I think you think the government's done as well.
You've got a minute on
this.
They're
both the same, and it's an 8.
Right. And do you remember what you've been doing last year? Because I haven't looked back this year.
I can't remember. I think it was a 7. I think.
So 8's a good number, sort of thing. I mean, not much room for improvement, really.
Well, there is. I mean, a 9 and a 10 would be much better, but I think anyone's deluding themselves if they give a 10, because I think there's always room for improvement. How
are you dealing with all this, you personally, with this massive? Well, it was then. It probably still is now. No one obviously knows what's going on behind the scenes, particularly. Are you happy with what you're doing and comfortable that you can see the years out? I am. I mean, me myself, anyone who knows me knows I deal with pressure fairly well. I'm quite lucky in that regard. I don't let things get me down, and I come from the point of view, as I said at the start of this interview, the problems are there to be fixed. So I don't see the point in worrying about problems, because worrying doesn't fix anything. Well, your energies and your focus is better at fixing the problem itself.